She turned around on the steep rocky trail, looked straight at him with that confident smile, and said it loud enough for everyone to hear. You can do it from behind. His foot slipped. His heart stopped. The entire group went silent. Every single person froze mid step, and the only sound left was the wind moving through the trees above them. He felt his face go hot, felt his breath catch somewhere between his lungs and his throat, and for one horrible second he thought maybe he had heard her wrong. Maybe the altitude was messing with his head. Maybe he had finally lost it. But no, she had said it out loud in front of everyone. Her laugh broke the tension, like glass shattering, bright and teasing and completely unbothered. The climb, she said, still smiling, eyes dancing with something he could not quite name. I meant the climb. It's easier if you push from behind while I guide you up. That's how you get past the steep parts. Before we continue, please like this video, subscribe, and let me know where you are watching from. He blinked, tried to breathe, tried to remember how legs worked. His brain scrambled to catch up with what had just happened, replaying her words over again, like a song stuck on repeat. The climb. She meant the climb. Of course she meant the climb. What else would she have meant? They were on a hiking trail, halfway up a mountain, surrounded by rocks and dirt and trees. There was no other context, no hidden meaning, just a helpful suggestion about how to navigate a difficult section of the path. So why did it sound like that? Why did the way she said it make his pulse kick into overdrive? Why was she still looking at him with that little half smile, like she knew exactly what she had done and was enjoying every second of his confusion? The rest of the group started moving again, a few nervous laughs rippling through the air, someone muttering something about taking a water break, but she did not look away. She held his gaze for one beat too long, her eyes warm and playful and completely aware. Come on, she said, her voice softer now, but still carrying that edge of mischief. I promise I'll go slow. He swallowed hard, nodded, took a step forward, because what else was he supposed to do? His hands were shaking just a little as he reached for the next handhold, his mind racing through 1,000 thoughts at once. Was she messing with him? Did she know how that sounded? Of course she knew. She had to know. Nobody said something like that by accident, not with that tone, not with that look in her eyes. But how had they even gotten here? How had a casual weekend hike turned into whatever this was? He could still remember this morning, the way she had smiled at him across the parking lot, the way his stomach had flipped when she waved him over. He had thought today would be simple. Fresh air, good views, maybe a chance to talk to her without overthinking every word. He had not expected this. Her voice drifted down from above, teasing and light. You coming, or do I need to come back down and get you? He looked up. She was watching him again, waiting. His heart hammered against his ribs. The morning had started 6 hours earlier at the trailhead parking lot. When he pulled in and saw her leaning against her car, already lacing up her hiking boots. The sun was barely up, the air still cool and fresh, and she looked completely in her element. Her backpack sat beside her, perfectly organized with water bottles clipped to the sides and what looked like a first aid kit strapped to the top. She had her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she was double checking something on her phone, probably the trail map, because that was the kind of person she was, prepared, confident, the type who actually knew what they were doing. He parked 2 spots away and sat there for a second, trying to figure out if coming on this hike was a good idea or the most obvious thing he had ever done. His friend Marcus had invited him 3 days ago, mentioned it casually over drinks, said a group was going and he should come along. He had said yes before Marcus even finished the sentence, and they both knew why. She was going. That was the only reason he needed. When he stepped out of the car, she looked up and smiled. Not a polite smile, a real one, the kind that made his chest feel tight. You actually came, she called out, her voice carrying across the parking lot. He walked over, trying to act like his heart was not already racing. You sound surprised. I am, she said, finishing the knot on her boot and standing up. I thought you'd bail. You know this trail is almost 6 miles, right? And most of it is uphill. I can handle it, he said, though he was not entirely sure that was true. Her smile widened just a little, like she did not believe him, but found it cute that he was trying. We'll see. Marcus and two other friends showed up a few minutes later, and the group started gathering their things, talking about the route and how long it would take. She took charge without even trying, pulling out a printed map and pointing out where they would stop for breaks. Everyone listened. Nobody questioned her. She had done this trail 4 times before, knew every turn and steep section, and it showed. He stood to the side, adjusting the straps on his backpack, watching her explain the plan with that easy confidence he had always found so attractive. Their eyes met across the group just for a second. She paused mid sentence, held his gaze, then looked back at the map like nothing had happened, but something in his stomach flipped. All right, she said, folding the map and tucking it into her pocket. Let's get moving before it gets too hot. Everyone started walking toward the trailhead, and he fell into step beside her. She glanced at him, that same small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. So, are you ready to keep up? There was something in the way she said it, something teasing and light that made him feel like she was asking more than one question. He met her eyes, tried to match her energy. Guess we'll find out. Guess we will, she said, and the way she looked at him made his pulse kick up a notch. Marcus caught up to them, grinning like an idiot. You two are so obvious, he said under his breath, just loud enough for both of them to hear. She laughed, unbothered. I have no idea what you're talking about. Sure you don't, Marcus said, shaking his head. I give it 2 hours before one of you says something. Says what? She asked innocently, but her eyes sparkled with mischief. Marcus just walked ahead, leaving them alone again. The trail started easy, a flat dirt path winding through the trees. The group spread out naturally, some people walking faster, others taking their time. He stayed near her, not close enough to be obvious, but not far enough to lose her either. She set a steady pace, pointing out things along the way: a bird perched on a low branch, a cluster of wildflowers growing near the path. She knew the names of half of them, rattled them off like it was nothing. You really love this, he said after a while. She looked at him surprised. What? Hiking, being out here. You light up when you talk about it. Her cheeks flushed just a little, and for the first time that morning, she seemed caught off guard. I didn't know you were paying that much attention. I pay attention, he said, and the words came out softer than he meant them to. She slowed her pace, let the group pull ahead just enough that they had space. The forest felt quieter suddenly, just the two of them and the sound of their footsteps on the trail. She looked at him again, longer this time, like she was trying to figure something out. Your backpack strap is twisted, she said finally, stepping closer. Here, let me fix it. Before he could respond, her hands were on his shoulder, fingers brushing against the strap as she adjusted it. She was close enough that he could smell her shampoo, something light and floral. Her touch lingered just a second longer than it needed to, and when she pulled away, her eyes stayed on his. There, she said quietly. Better. He could not find words, could not think past the feeling of her hands on him, the way she was still standing close, the way her lips curved into that knowing smile. Come on, she said, stepping back and starting down the trail again. We're falling behind. He followed because what else could he do? His heart was pounding, his mind replaying that moment over and over, the way she had touched him, the way she had looked at him, the way everything between them felt like it was building towards something he could not quite name yet. If you're enjoying this so far, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me if you've ever been on a hike that changed everything. The trail changed about 30 minutes in. The flat dirt path gave way to something rockier, steeper, the kind of terrain that required actual effort instead of just a casual walk. The group started to spread out naturally, some people pushing ahead faster, others falling back to catch their breath. Marcus and the other two friends moved forward, laughing about something he could not quite hear, and just like that, it became the two of them, her in front, him behind, the distance between them closing and widening with every step. She moved like she belonged out here, her footing sure and steady, even when the rocks got loose under her boots. He tried to match her pace, tried to make it look easy, but his lungs were already working harder than he wanted to admit. She glanced back over her shoulder, caught him breathing a little heavier, and smiled. "You doing okay back there?" she asked, slowing down just enough to let him catch up. "Fine," he said, even though his legs were starting to burn. "Totally fine." "Uh-huh." Her tone said she did not believe him for a second. "You know, it's okay to take a break. Nobody's keeping score." "I'm keeping score," he said, surprising himself with the comeback. She laughed, a real laugh that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. "Oh, you're competitive. I like that." The way she said it, low and warm, sent a spark through his chest. He was not sure if they were still talking about hiking anymore, but he did not want to ask, did not want to risk breaking whatever this was. They kept climbing, the trail winding upward through thick trees that blocked out most of the sun. The air smelled like pine and earth, and every so often she would point out something worth noticing, a view through the branches where you could see the valley below, a smooth, flat rock that was perfect for sitting, a narrow creek running alongside the path, the water so clear you could see the stones at the bottom. "You've really done this a lot," he said after she pointed out the fourth interesting thing in 10 minutes. "I come up here when I need to think," she said, glancing back at him again. "It's quiet, peaceful, makes everything else feel smaller, you know." He did know, or at least he thought he did, but hearing her say it, hearing that softer tone in her voice, made him want to know more, made him want to ask what she came up here to think about, what things she needed to make smaller. He did not ask, though, not yet. The moment felt too fragile, too new. The trail got steeper. She stopped at the base of a section where the rocks jutted out in uneven steps, each one higher than the last. She turned to face him, hands on her hips, and he could see the challenge in her eyes before she even spoke. "This part's tricky," she said, "and you need to use your hands as much as your feet. Just follow my lead." "Always do," he said before he could stop himself. Her smile turned sly. "Do you now?" He felt his face heat up, but she had already turned around and started climbing. He followed, watching where she placed her hands and feet, trying to copy her movements. The rocks were rough under his palms, and more than once his boots slipped on a patch of loose gravel. She made it look effortless. He made it look like work. Halfway up, she stopped and reached her hand back toward him. "Here," she said, "Nate, grab on." He hesitated for half a second, then took her hand. Her fingers closed around his, warm and strong, and she pulled him up to the next ledge. Their hands stayed locked together longer than they needed to, her grip firm, her thumb brushing against the side of his hand in a way that felt deliberate. When she finally let go, he felt the absence of her touch like a door closing. "See," she said, her voice a little breathless now. "Easy. For you, maybe," he said, and she laughed again. They kept going, the climb getting harder with each step. His legs were screaming now, his lungs working overtime, but he refused to stop, refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing him quit. She checked on him every few minutes, always with that teasing edge, always with that smile that made him forget how tired he was. "Water?" she asked, stopping at a flat section and pulling a bottle from her pack. I have my own, he said, reaching for his backpack. I know, she said, holding hers out anyway, but mine's colder. He took it. Their fingers brushed again when he handed it back, and he swore she let the contact last a beat too long. She watched him while he drank, her eyes steady and unreadable, and he felt like she was studying him, trying to figure out how far she could push before he said something. The group was nowhere in sight now. It was just the two of them and the mountain and the sound of birds somewhere high in the trees. She started moving again, and he followed, the space between them shrinking until he was close enough to hear her breathing, close enough to notice the way her ponytail swayed with each step. You're quieter than I expected, she said after a while, not looking back. What do you mean? I don't know. I thought you'd talk more, ask more questions. You're always so chatty when we're out with everyone else. Maybe I'm just focused, he said. On what? On you, he thought, but did not say. On not falling? She laughed, soft and low. Smart. The trail leveled out for a few yards, then shot upward again into the steepest section yet. She stopped at the base of it and turned to face him, her expression shifting into something more serious. This is the hardest part, she said, stepping closer. You have to be careful here. One wrong step, and you'll slide right back down. She was close enough now that he could feel the warmth coming off her skin, close enough that when she leaned in to point at the rocks above, her breath brushed against his ear. See that ledge? She said, her voice barely above a whisper. That's where you want to aim for. Put your weight on your left foot, then push up with your right. I'll be right above you, so if you need help, just say the word. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Her proximity was doing things to his ability to think clearly. She pulled back, her eyes lingering on his face for a second longer than necessary. Then she turned and started climbing. He followed, gripping the rocks harder than he needed to, his heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with the climb. She moved above him, confident and steady, and he tried to focus on where she was stepping instead of the way her body moved, the curve of her legs, the flex of her arms. He was halfway up when his foot slipped on a loose stone, and he felt himself tilt backward. Panic shot through him, his hands scrambling for purchase, and then her voice cut through the noise in his head. I've got you, she said, reaching down. He grabbed her hand, and she pulled him up with surprising strength, her grip solid and sure. For a moment, they were face to face, both of them breathing hard, her eyes locked on his. Thanks, he managed. Any time, she said, and there was something in her voice that made his stomach flip. They reached the top of the steep section together, and she stopped to catch her breath. He stopped too, his legs shaking, his heart still racing. The group was somewhere far ahead, their voices faint and distant. She looked at him, that playful smile returning, and he knew she was about to say something. He could see it in the way her eyes lit up, in the way she tilted her head just slightly. You know, she said, glancing back at the rocks they had just climbed, that section's a lot easier when you know the trick. What trick? He asked, grateful for the distraction from the way his pulse was hammering in his ears. She stepped closer, her smile widening. You have to push from the bottom while someone guides from the top. She paused, her eyes dancing with mischief. Kind of like what we just did, you pushing up, me pulling you through. He stared at her, his brain trying to process if she was saying what he thought she was saying. Her smile turned knowing, and she looked away, starting down the next section of trail like she had not just turned his entire world upside down with a few carefully chosen words. Come on, she called back without looking. We're almost to the really steep part. the really steep part. He almost laughed, except he was not sure if she was talking about the trail anymore. She kept walking, kept throwing those little comments over her shoulder, each one innocent on the surface, but carrying a weight that made his head spin. She knew exactly what she was doing, knew exactly how her words landed, how they made him second guess every sentence. And the worst part, or maybe the best part, was that he could not tell if he minded. The trail narrowed, forced them closer together. At one point, she stumbled on a root hidden under some leaves, and his hands shot out on instinct, catching her by the waist to steady her. She turned in his grip, her body pressed against his for just a second, her eyes wide with surprise that melted into something warmer. Good reflexes, she said softly. He let go, stepped back, his hands still tingling from where they had touched her. Didn't want you to fall. My hero, she teased, but her voice was gentler now, less playful, and more something else. Something real. They kept walking, the trail curving upward again, and he realized he had no idea how much farther they had to go. Did not care, really, because every step brought another moment like this, another look, another touch, another line that walked the edge between innocent and something far more dangerous, and he was not ready for it to end. She looked back at him one more time, her smile soft and knowing. Still keeping up. Barely, he admitted. Good, she said. I like it when you're a little breathless. His heart stopped, started again. She turned away before he could respond, before he could figure out what to say to that, and all he could do was follow. Don't forget to like this video and let me know in the comments. Would you have been brave enough to keep climbing, or would you have turned back? They reached the summit just as the sun started its slow descent toward the horizon. The group had already gathered at the main lookout point, taking photos and passing around snacks, their voices loud and celebratory. He stood there for a moment, catching his breath, taking in the view that stretched out for miles. Mountains rolled into the distance, layers of green and blue fading into haze, and the sky above them was starting to shift into shades of orange and pink. She stood a few feet away, her hands on her hips, looking out at the view with something close to satisfaction on her face. Marcus called out to her, waving her over for a group photo, and she went, smiling and laughing as everyone crowded together. He stayed back, watching her, watching the way she fit so easily into the moment, like she belonged anywhere she decided to be. When the photos were done, she turned and caught his eye. Something passed between them, unspoken, and she tilted her head toward a spot off to the side, away from the noise. He followed without hesitation. The quieter spot was only 20 yards away, but it felt like a different world. A flat rock jutted out over the edge, offering a view that was somehow better than the main lookout, more private, more theirs. She walked to the edge and sat down, her legs dangling over the side, and he joined her, leaving just enough space between them to be safe. The voices of their friends faded into background noise, and for the first time all day, it was quiet, really quiet. She stared out at the horizon, her expression softer now, the teasing energy that had followed them up the mountain gone. She looked tired in the best way, her cheeks flushed from the climb, a few stray pieces of hair falling loose from her ponytail. He wanted to say something, wanted to fill the silence, but he had no idea where to start. I love it up here, she said finally, her voice low and thoughtful. No matter how many times I come, it always feels like the first time. I can see why, he said, though he was not looking at the view anymore. He was looking at her. She turned her head, met his eyes, and for a second she looked like she was about to say something playful, something to bring back that teasing edge, but she did not. Instead, she just held his gaze, and the weight of it settled between them like a question neither of them knew how to ask. I'm glad you came, she said quietly. You told Marcus to invite me, didn't you? The corner of her mouth lifted, but it was not a smile exactly, more like an admission. Maybe he felt something shift in his chest. Why? She looked away, back at the horizon, and he watched her take a slow breath. The silence stretched, and he could feel her deciding something, working through words in her head before she let them out. Because I've been wanting to spend time with you, she said finally, her voice steady but softer than before. Real time, not just at parties or in groups where there are too many people and too much noise. I wanted to see if she trailed off, shook her head slightly. I don't know. I wanted to see if this thing I've been feeling was just in my head or if you felt it too. His heart kicked against his ribs. You've been feeling something? She laughed, but it was quiet, almost self conscious. Don't make me say it out loud. I want you to, he said, and the honesty in his own voice surprised him. She turned to look at him again, and this time there was no teasing in her eyes, no playfulness, just vulnerability, raw and real. I've been watching you for weeks, she said. Every time we're out with everyone, I find myself looking for you, listening for your voice, hoping you'll sit next to me or say something that gives me an excuse to talk to you. I thought maybe I was imagining it the way you looked at me sometimes. But then Marcus mentioned the hike and you said yes so fast. And I thought maybe I'm not imagining it. He could not breathe, could not think past the sound of her words, the way they landed in the space between them and changed everything. You're not imagining it, he said, his voice rough. I came because you were going. That's the only reason. Marcus knew it. I think everyone knew it except maybe you. Her lips parted slightly, like she was going to say something, but no words came out. She just stared at him, her eyes wide and searching, and he could see her trying to figure out if he meant it, if this was real. I've been circling this for so long, he continued, the words tumbling out now because he could not stop them, trying to find the right moment to say something, trying to figure out if you'd think I was crazy or if maybe, just maybe, you felt the same way. And today, all day, with you looking back at me and saying things that I could not tell if you meant or if you were just messing with me, I kept thinking I was going to lose my mind. She laughed, soft and breathless. I was messing with you, but I was also not messing with you. Does that make sense? No, he said, smiling despite the tension coiling in his chest. But I don't care. She shifted closer, closing the gap between them just a little. Her shoulder was almost touching his now, the warmth of her body close enough to feel. He could smell her shampoo again, could see the way her pulse jumped in her throat, and he realized she was just as nervous as he was. So what now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He did not have an answer, did not trust himself to say the right thing. So instead, he moved slowly, carefully. He shifted closer until their shoulders pressed together, until the space between them disappeared completely. She did not pull away, did not move at all, except to tilt her head slightly, her eyes dropping to his mouth for just a second before coming back up to meet his gaze. The air between them felt heavy, charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. He could see her breathing faster, could feel his own heart pounding so hard he thought she might hear it. He wanted to kiss her, wanted it so badly it hurt, but he waited because he needed to know she wanted it too. She leaned in just a fraction, her lips close enough that he could feel her breath against his skin. His hand moved without thinking, reaching up to brush a strand of hair away from her face, and the touch made her inhale sharply. His fingers lingered against her cheek, and she closed her eyes for half a second, leaning into his hand like she had been waiting for this just as long as he had. I've been thinking about this, she whispered, her eyes opening again, darker now, more intense, about you, about what it would feel like if we stopped pretending. We don't have to pretend, he said, his voice low and rough. No, she agreed. We don't. She started to lean in again, her lips so close to his that he could almost taste her. And then she stopped, pulled back just enough to look at him, her eyes searching his face like she was memorizing every detail. I need you to know, she said, her voice trembling just slightly, that if we do this, I'm not playing anymore. I'm not teasing. This is real for me. It's real for me too, he said, his hand still cradling her face, his thumb brushing against her cheekbone. It's been real the whole time. She smiled, and it was the most genuine smile he had seen from her all day. No mischief, no teasing edge, just happiness, pure and unguarded. She leaned in again, slower this time, giving him every chance to pull away, to change his mind. But he did not. He met her halfway, closing the distance between them until their lips were a breath apart, until the only thing left to do was let go of every fear and doubt and hesitation and just feel. The moment before contact felt like forever, like the entire world had stopped turning just to give them this one perfect second where everything hung in the balance, where nothing had gone wrong yet and everything was still possible. Her eyes fluttered closed, his did too. And then finally, after weeks of wondering and wanting and waiting, their lips met. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking something fragile. But then her hand came up to rest against his chest, her fingers curling into his shirt, and he felt the last bit of restraint between them dissolve. He pulled her closer, his other hand moving to her waist, and she responded by pressing into him, the kiss deepening, becoming something more urgent, more real. She tasted like chapstick and the faint sweetness of the energy bar she had eaten earlier, and he could not get enough. When they finally pulled apart, both of them breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his and smiled. I've been wanting to do that since the parking lot, she said, her voice shaky and breathless. You should have, he said. It would have saved me a lot of stress. She laughed, and the sound was light and free, and he realized he would do anything to hear that laugh again, to be the reason for it. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in deeper shades of red and gold, and they sat there together, her hand still resting against his chest, his arm wrapped around her waist. The world stretched out below them, vast and endless, but all he could focus on was her, the way she fit against him, the way she looked at him, like he was the only thing that mattered. We should probably head back, she said after a while, though she made no move to stand. Probably, he agreed, not moving either. She smiled, leaned in, and kissed him again, softer this time, sweeter. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright and full of something he could only describe as hope. Come on, she said, standing and holding out her hand, before they send a search party. He took her hand, let her pull him to his feet, and they stood there for a moment longer, fingers intertwined, looking out at the view one last time before heading back to reality. The descent was easier than the climb, but everything about it felt different. They walked together, close enough that their arms brushed with every step, and when the trail got steep or rocky, he reached for her hand without thinking. She took it every time, her fingers lacing through his, like they had been doing this for years instead of minutes. There was no awkwardness, no second guessing, just comfort, just the two of them moving down the mountain together, the weight of what had happened at the summit settling into something real and solid between them. She glanced at him as they navigated a particularly tricky section, her eyes bright with something that looked a lot like happiness. You know, she said, her voice carrying that teasing edge again, but softer now, warmer. You're a lot better at the downhill part. Maybe I just needed the right motivation, he said, squeezing her hand gently. Her smile widened. Oh, so I'm your motivation now. Always were, he said, and the honesty of it made her stop walking for a second. She turned to face him, her expression shifting into something more tender, and she leaned up to kiss him quickly, a brief press of lips that left him wanting more. Good answer, she whispered, then kept walking, pulling him along behind her. They caught up with the group about 15 minutes later. Marcus saw them first, saw their hands intertwined, and his face split into the biggest grin. Finally, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. I thought I was going to have to lock you two in a tent or something. Shut up, she said, laughing, but she did not let go of his hand. About time, one of the other friends chimed in. The tension was killing all of us. Was it that obvious? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Painfully, Marcus said, but we're happy for you. Really. The group kept moving, but the teasing did not stop. Little comments here and there, knowing looks, the kind of ribbing that came from friends who genuinely cared and were just relieved that something had finally happened. He took it all in stride, and so did she, their hands still linked, the connection between them impossible to miss. By the time they reached the parking lot, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky streaked with deep purple and fading orange. Everyone was tired, ready to head home, and they said their goodbyes in the easy way that comes after a long day spent together. Marcus gave him a knowing look and a pat on the shoulder before climbing into his car, and the others waved as they pulled out, leaving just the two of them standing in the nearly empty lot. She turned to face him, her backpack still slung over one shoulder, her hair a little messier than it had been that morning. She looked beautiful. She looked like someone he wanted to keep seeing, keep knowing, keep kissing every chance he got. So, she said, her voice quiet in the stillness of the evening, that was a good hike. Best one I've ever been on, he said, and he meant it. She smiled, stepped closer until there was barely any space left between them. We should do it again, just the two of us next time. I'd like that, he said, his hands finding her waist, pulling her in gently. When? Soon, she said, her arms wrapping around his neck. Maybe next weekend. There's another trail I've been wanting to try. It's got this view at the top that's supposed to be incredible. I'm sure the view will be incredible, he said, his eyes not leaving hers, but I think I'm more interested in the company. She laughed softly, her fingers playing with the hair at the base of his neck. You're getting pretty good at this whole flirting thing. I learned from the best, he said. Her smile turned sly, that familiar mischief flickering back into her eyes. You know, I have to admit something. What's that? When I said you could do it from behind earlier, she paused, her smile widening. I knew exactly how it sounded. He stared at her, half shocked, half amused. You did that on purpose? Maybe, she said, biting her lip to keep from laughing. I wanted to see how you'd react, wanted to see if you'd say something, or if you'd just keep following me up that mountain. You're terrible, he said, shaking his head, but he was smiling. I know, she said, her voice dropping to something softer, more sincere. But you followed me anyway. That's how I knew. Knew what? That you felt the same way I did. He kissed her then, slow and deep, pouring every unspoken feeling from the last few weeks into that single moment. Her hands tightened in his hair, and she pressed closer, kissing him back with the same intensity, the same need. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathing hard, she rested her head against his chest, and he held her there, his arms wrapped around her like he never wanted to let go. I should probably head home, she said after a while, though she made no move to leave. Probably, he agreed, not letting go either. She pulled back just enough to look up at him, her eyes searching his face. Text me when you get home. Promise, he said. She smiled, kissed him one more time, quick and sweet, then stepped back and walked toward her car. He watched her go, watched her toss her backpack into the back seat, and turned to wave at him, before climbing in. She rolled down her window, leaned out slightly, and called across the parking lot. Hey, she said, her voice carrying through the quiet evening air. Yeah? Same time next weekend, and this time I'll let you lead. He laughed, shook his head, and waved as she pulled out of the parking lot, her taillights disappearing down the road. He stood there for a moment longer, replaying the entire day in his head, the way it had started and the way it had ended, and he realized that everything had changed in the span of a few hours. She had turned his world upside down with a single line, a single look, a single kiss, and he could not wait to see where it went from here. He climbed into his own car, pulled out his phone, and sent her a text before he even left the parking lot, already counting down to next weekend. Her response came back almost immediately. Me too. He smiled, set his phone down, and started the drive home. The memory of her laugh and her kiss and her hand in his playing on repeat in his mind. Like this video, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what's the boldest thing someone's ever said to you that turned out to be completely innocent. I'd really appreciate it if you could share your thoughts about my videos in the comments. Your feedback helps me improve and create even better content for you. Thank you.